Let's see if that does anything for gather. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to, but I've never been on this side again. Okay, we are live right now. Let's see what we're doing here. Oh, it's still not showing. Why isn't this working? Oh.
I wonder. It's changed the countdown now to saying waiting for Google News Initiative. I don't know if that means anything.
On StreamYard or on
YouTube? Like the little countdown link changed to waiting for Google News Initiative.
Let's see what I can do on this side. I've done everything that I think to do, but
maybe there's a chance that it'll just start for us at 2.
That's what I'm thinking, because I think that's what we've done in the past, but I just cannot confirm that, obviously.
We can just smile and hope that if it decides to...
2 seconds to find that out. Let's see.
All right, we're seeing you guys.
Oh, it's working?
Yep,
great. Oh,
amazing.
Fabulous. Amazing. Oh, hi, everyone. We're seeing some folks trickle in. So we're going to get started in just about 5 minutes. If you are watching on the Gather page, you can actually leave comments and questions directly below. So go ahead and put that in there if there's any questions you have ahead of time. Otherwise, it'd be great to know your name and what news organization you're from and where you're dialing in from today. And we'd love to see you guys. So we'll give you guys a couple of minutes just to get situated and we'll get started shortly.
Can't wait. Continue saying hi to everyone that's joining. I can't actually see the numbers ticking up, but I know that they must be.
They're going up. I think it's just 1 minute after, so we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tina.
Amazing. Awesome. Hey, Leo from New York Jewish Week and Jewish Telegraph Agency. Nice to meet you. Feel free to click that Ask a Question button below if you have any questions or if you want to introduce yourself and say hi.
Yes, we love that.
Oh, wow. Got a bunch at once. Hello, Sarah from Canada and Daily Hive. Hello, Claire from Daily Hive. We got 2 Daily Hive friends here. Hello, Joey from the Hill Times. Great to see you guys. And again, if you're just joining now, feel free to leave a question or comment below with the Ask a Question function. You can introduce yourself, share your name, what publication you're from, and where you're dialing in from. Amazing. Oh, we got a bunch in here. Hello, Darcy from Daily Hive. Aman also from Daily Hive. So lots of folks from Canada over here. Hey there, Carly from Havana Explorers Away. Hannah McLean from Daily Hive. Anna from Wyophile in Wyoming. Nicholas from Argentina. Amir from Daily Hive. Wow, you guys all turned out today. Hi, Rich from Jewish News of Greater Phoenix. So cool. You guys are calling from really all over here. Marina from Agencia Publica in Brazil. Octavio from Publimetro. Robbie from Google, who will also be the moderator. You can leave any questions you have, and we can answer them live or in the comments. Hello, Eduardo from Rede Gazeta. Gerardo from Mexico. Cheryl from Texas Metro. So good to see you. Cheryl is one of our Lab alumni. Hello, Saco Bay News. Liz from Maine. Megan from, Daily Hive. Yes, I think we already said hello to all of our Daily Hive friends. Hey, Ryan from What's Up Noop in Newport, Rhode Island. Hogan from the Daily Hive. David from Miami, independent journalist. Very fun. Hello, Catherine from Illinois Answers Project in Chicago. Hello, Anne from Columbus, Ohio, Columbus Underground. Carolina from Denik N, in Czech Republic. Alvaro from La Noticia. Again, actually funny enough, Denik and La Noticia, both also Lab alumni of ours. So super excited to see all of you guys. Leah from Jewish Phoenix and Center for Jewish Philanthropy of Greater Phoenix. And Rich also there too. Hello, May from Los Angeles. Awesome. I think everyone is filing in. So we'll give you guys just a couple more seconds if you want to leave your intros, but we can get started.
Awesome.
Amazing. James Koo from Al Jazeera. All right, Nicole, you want to fire up what we'll be talking about today?
Yes. All right. I will definitely kick us off here. So hi, everyone. As you may have heard, Tina and I were saying hello to a few of you as you were going through today. But today we will be talking about Google Analytics 4. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. We have had quite a few publishers reach out to ask us some questions about Google Analytics 4, and we wanted to make sure that we had a workshop series to essentially cover a lot of this information for you. So Tina and I from the Google News Initiative will be kicking off this information today, and I will pass it over to Tina to give some information before we get started into the content.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for the tea of Nicole. And we can tell you a little bit more about the Google News Initiative in case you're not familiar. We're seeing obviously a lot of Lab alumni in the chat, so super excited to see some familiar faces too. But Nicole and I work at the Google News Initiative, which is Google's partnership with the news industry. So Google works with publishers and journalists to build a stronger news ecosystem. And what that looks like is workshops like these, as well as our labs, which you heard me mentioning in the beginning. We have several programs where you can get free of charge training online on topics like Google Analytics 4, but also on things covering audience and revenue. So we'll attach a resources section after this workshop if you want to explore any of those. And if you want to see what workshops are coming up for us, this is actually the first of 4 workshops that we'll be doing. So we're doing 2 workshops before the July 1st deadline and 2 workshops after the July 1st deadline. So big thank you to Nicole for taking the time to walk you guys through some of the changes that GA4 is bringing along, and also what you can do to set yourself up for success. So we're super excited to have her here. She is our resident expert on GA4 within GNI. So we're super excited to share all of these things with you. So I will toss it back to her now, and we can get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tina. All right. So to get started, before we jump straight into what's changing, a few things here. So as we all know, Google Analytics 4 is going to be kickstarting on July 1st. And by kickstarting, I more so mean that Universal Analytics is going to be sunset completely. And so for those of you who are on Analytics 360, you will have 1 additional year. But for those of you who are on the free version of Analytics, July 1st is going to be that cutoff date, as Tina had mentioned. So there are going to be some things that we want to discuss high level about what's changing, what you need to make sure you're doing before July 1st. And we will also be walking through part of the UI with you today in tandem with answering a lot of the questions that are coming through. So as much as this is a live webinar, we also want it to be as collaborative as possible. So please leave all of your questions. And then later on, you will see Tina come back on with me, and we will be doing a Q&A style and try and get through as many as we possibly can. And then, of course, we will try to continue responding to all of those or bring in those questions to our next webinar if we deem them to be super appropriate for it. All right, so what's changing? There's a lot that we want to think about for what's changing within Google Analytics. And I think that some of the stuff that we want to cover with you today is going to be along the major changes, right? So as we get started, one of the first things is we used to measure something called goals in Universal Analytics. And so with our goals in Universal, it was essentially like how you could track exactly, I don't know, where your subscription page was or a myriad of different things. And so as we've transitioned to GA4, essentially what we're working on now is more about events and conversions, newsletter signups, and that type of information. And so for the event nomenclature, essentially everything within GA4 is now considered an event. So there are no more necessarily like page views or certain metrics such as that. It's all going to be events. Now, your most important events, such as conversion events or newsletter signup, the most important events are going to be considered your conversions. So essentially with conversions are going to be, let's say, your subscription or your contributions or your newsletter sign up. And so you'll be able to easily mark those within your GA4, but know moving forward that it will not necessarily be called goals. It'll be called conversion events. All right. The next big thing that we are going to be talking about, you'll now be able to search for your insights. And so essentially with GA4, the search functionality is one of my favorite things to mention or discuss. So within Universal Analytics, there was definitely search functionality, but it wouldn't necessarily be able to answer a lot of the questions that you would ask the search bar. But within GA4, one of the really cool parts about GA4 is that this search functionality is much more new and improved. So if you wanted to say something along the lines of how many users did I receive last month, or how many conversion events did I receive for newsletter last month, this is exactly where you could go and type in that question for you to get a quick populated answer right within the search bar. And a lot of the times, if it's connected to a report that could uncover some of this information, it'll actually direct you to that report within Google Analytics as well. And so this, of course, can be used for a lot of different questions. And so what I would do is I urge you to kind of play with the search bar, see what you can search for, because I think that that's a really important, really cool insight. The next is getting insights automatically. So something also brand new for GA4 is the machine learning capabilities that we have incorporated within the platform. As you connect your data and as the analytics better understands what your publication looks like, how users are coming to your publication, how they're navigating through, etc., it will start bringing up insights within the homepage of your GA4. Now, of course, these insights can be found throughout the entire GA4 user interface. And they can be found by looking for kind of like the little magic wand or like sparkle emoji. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when we go into the platform. But essentially what it's going to show you is something that it would find very appropriate for you to measure, or potentially a really good measurement for you and your team. And this could be also within audiences and like anything along those lines, as well as it starts to learn some of the audiences and users coming to your site and behavior. All right. And the last, and I think probably like the most important in my mind, is essentially being able to connect to Google Ad Manager and the Search Console. And so I think before, when you were using Universal Analytics, you did not have the ability to connect unless you had 360. And so essentially now with GA4, you have the ability to connect to Google Ad Manager as well as Search Console, and actually a few other platforms as well, which we can show you when we actually head over to the UI in a minute. But this is really important because essentially this will allow you to kind of take a look at your data from your ad manager within your analytics, and it also helps with audiences and segmentation that way. Being able to look at your Search Console through your analytics lens as well. It's all helpful to incorporate as much data as you can to get a holistic picture of what's going on. All right. So now what we'll be discussing or talking about is what exactly to do now that we know a little bit about what might be changing within our accounts. And so kind of what we'll jump into now is essentially a a few different items that we want to keep top of mind. So for your GA by July 1st, you want to make sure that you create your GA4 instance. Now, I know I mentioned this a little bit ago, but essentially, and I need to make this as clear as possible, please, please, please make sure that you create your GA4 instance before July 1st. The reason being is that essentially on July 1st, all of the standard Universal Analytics properties will stop processing data. So you will be able to view your Universal Analytics reports for a period of time after that data. And originally, it was actually mentioned that the time that you would be able to review those reports would be until December of 2023. And just recently, they've now given us an extension of when you'll be able to view your data within your Universal Analytics account. And that will now be until July 1st of 2024. So you'll have an additional 6 months to continue looking at your data and continue exporting it as you get ready for this transition. Now, how to start using Google Analytics 4, you need to also make sure that you have the correct permissions when you're working on creating this new instance or account. So make sure that you're an editor or an administrator, and you have around 3 options that you could use in order to get started. So your option 1 is to set up analytics data collection for the first time if you have no other accounts. So do this if you're just getting started with analytics and want to collect data from your website or app. And now that also reminds me, another really big thing with GA4, if you have an app for your publication, GA4 will now incorporate cross-domain and cross-platform tracking within the GA4 instance. So now if you are using an app, you probably use something Firebase for analytics, you'll be able to incorporate all of this data in one within GA4. So you'll be able to measure both web and app. Now, option 2, for getting set up, you can add Google Analytics 4 to a site with Universal Analytics, or what we're calling Classic Analytics. And what we'll have is a GA4 setup wizard, which will be available to add a Google Analytics 4 property along with the Universal Analytics property that you have now. The Universal Analytics property will continue to collect data, of course, until July 1. And then you'll be able to access both through the property selector in like your manage area. And then the last option is to essentially like add Google Analytics 4 to a website platform, or if you're using a CMS, or content management system, for those of you who are not familiar with CMS, you essentially choose this option if you're using a website hosted on a CMS. If you're using like WordPress, Drupal, Squarespace, there are some options within Universal Analytics to select if you're setting this up with your CMS system. All right. Now, if we move forward, there's another thing that I want to remind everybody about, or like make sure that we're touching on. So essentially make sure that your pages are going to be tagged properly and that Setup Assistant is marked complete. The reason that we're reviewing this is because sometimes I hear from a lot of publishers, I'm looking at my UA data and my GA4 data, and there's a large discrepancy within this data set. To address that question, as like broadly speaking, the two are completely separate data models to begin with. So there will never be a one-to-one perfect match for a lot of this data, just because in general, the way that we're collecting this data is slightly different. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, if there's a very, very large discrepancy, that is something that should not be the norm. And if that is the case, the first thing I would do is urge you to ensure that the tags that you have for your GA4 property are set up correctly across all of your website pages. And then we can continue troubleshooting from there, and we can always like link out some resources for some of that information. But essentially with those data discrepancies, that's something to always like keep in mind. Now, the next thing here is that your Setup Assistant. If you're using the Setup Assistant, which I will show you in one moment, there's going to be a checklist of items. And as you go through this checklist, you can essentially mark as complete. Now, originally, it maybe wasn't stressed that it was important to mark all of these items or actions as complete if you're using the Setup Assistant. But if not marked complete by July 1, when it rolls around, this could cause issues with your new property if it then tries to set something up for you, if you're already in the middle of doing some merge. So please pay attention to that checklist of items so that nothing goes awry when you're looking at your events and data. Now, one way that you could also check to make sure your data is flowing correctly, you're like, okay, Nicole, I understand that I have to check to make sure my pages are set up properly, but like, what if I just need to make sure that this is actually flowing in correctly rather than waiting for a comparison of data metrics? So there's something called Debug View in GA4. And that will essentially allow you, and that's also found within admin, but Debug View will essentially allow you to see events as they're rolling in real time. And that's something I can show you when we're in there. Also, if you're using Tag Manager, which I would highly recommend, Google Tag Manager, you'll also be able to see in that area or space whether or not the events are rolling in correctly or the way that they're meant to. All right, moving forward. All right, one other thing that's super important to make sure as you're doing, and this is in tandem with ensuring that everything is set up correctly with your tags, but you would want to make sure that you're tagging all of your events as you need them. And there are a lot of different types of events within GA4. You have automatically collected enhanced measurements, and those, I'll show you where they're in. They're found within your data stream. And then you also have recommended events and custom events. And so based off of what you're looking to measure, you will be able to figure out which type of event you should be collecting. That and then conversions, which mentioned earlier, is essentially your most important events. And that's easy to mark as a conversion. And then you'll start being able to measure those moving forward. And if you choose to port your goals over from Universal Analytics to GA4, because there is an option to do that, please do check to make sure that they're capturing what you want them to capture. Given that these are, again, different data models, everything just needs to be reviewed and double checked, if that makes sense. All right, so now we're going to head over to the UI and check out everything that I was just mentioning so that we know what it actually looks like in real time. And I will head over to that area now. All right, so in our defense, we have a test account essentially to show you how to migrate from one version of your Universal Analytics to GA4. So this is for everyone on the call who has not yet migrated from Universal to GA4. I want to quickly show you how you can walk through that before we pop over into our GA4 user interface to look at what's underneath admin. All right, so one thing you could do is up here in this right-hand column or right-hand corner, there is complete GA4 setup. So you can click this, or you could also go down into your admin and it'll bring you here to this page, which we're looking at, and then you can click GA4 Setup Assistant. So, and they're also, I will say, I wasn't able to figure out how to show it for everyone here on the webinar today, but sometimes if you open up your Universal Analytics account, there's this huge countdown timer. If you're seeing the huge countdown timer, that means that you have not yet properly set up your GA4 account. So make sure that you're just not seeing that and you know which account you're using. So we're going to click on the complete the GA4 setup. All right. So as we're in here, now we see the setup assistant that I was talking about before. The reason that this is important is because as we walk through all of this, it's where you're going to set everything up and then make sure that you can either mark it as complete or manage whatever this check mark may be. So as we click into data collection, we'll manage our data streams. So data streams is also on the left-hand column here. So we were just in Setup Assistant, and now we've jumped down to data streams. Now, data streams is where you can connect both web and app properties. Once you connect your data stream, we'll be able to look at everything else that's within that data stream. But we're going to head back to Setup Assistant so we can run through the whole list. As you continue scrolling down, you're going to see property settings. So property settings will be turning on Google Signals, and this would allow for ads personalization. You can set up your conversions here, or you can also set them up over here on the left-hand side. You'll see I'm hovering over events and then hovering over conversions. Again, when you're thinking about this, you can manage them or mark as complete, whatever you decide to do. Define audiences. Also very, very important. If you have specific audience segments that you're looking to track or follow, make sure that they're set up here. And you'll also be able to import them from Universal Analytics if you have them. The one caveat with this is when you import them over, ensure that they're collecting data the way that you're expecting them to collect data. Now, there's no reason to expect them not to, but everything needs to be reviewed. And then you can also manage them where you could add more audiences, which is again, actually over here on the left-hand tab right under events, conversions, audiences. As you scroll down, you have the chance to talk about Google Ads. So if you're also working with the if you're on the advertising side as well, this is something that you can look at in order to kind of set up some ads for your site. Now, we have this advanced setup, which is called optional. So it's not going to impact the way that you're setting up your account, but just for everyone to know what you can find under here, because it is pretty useful. This is where you'll be able to manage users. So anyone that has access to your account, or if you're working with any third parties and you need to provide them access to your analytics, you'll be able to actually click here for actions. You can import all of them from Universal, which I actually think is a great way to have all of your contacts move over, because then you're manually like adding a lot of them. It could take a bit of time. So that's what I would actually recommend doing here. And then again, marking as complete if you would like, but again, this is optional, so it shouldn't affect anything. Importing data, if there are other like data sources that you want to import from, if you would like to link to BigQuery. We also get the question a lot of, I have all of this data in Universal Analytics, where should I put it? Or how do I export it? How do I export it to GA4? And I know I'm preempting some of the questions that are potentially in the Q&A, but with GA4, you will not be able to move all of your data from Universal Analytics into GA4. The reason being, again, kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning, where there are two different data models. And so the data, when it's imported, it wouldn't match up correctly. And so what we're essentially suggesting for all users is to kind of export that data to somewhere where you can review it, look back on it. And that could be a myriad of different options. One of them being BigQuery, another even being like Google Sheets, CSVs, kind of up to you and your publication, what would work best for you. Set up user ID. This is essentially for cross-platform and cross-device like management and reporting. So if we have someone that's moving from your app to your web, or from one web property to the next, and you wanted to manage that, this is where you would want to be able to set that up. All right. Now that we have gone through all of that here, I want to quickly show you property settings. All right, so in our property settings, we have the industry category. So please remember when you're selecting your industry category to select news. The reason that this is important is because you'll be able to better understand the audiences that are going to be recommended to you when they start tailoring them closer to news publishers or, advertisers, whatever it may be. But the industry category will bring more, I guess, relevant insights is what I would say for the account that you're looking at. And then, of course, your reporting time zone and your currency, etc. Property access management are all of the people that have access to your account. And so that's another area where you're able to access all of those users. Data streams. So this is, again, where you will find your web or app data streams. And this is where you'll be able to add your data stream as well. And you can kind of choose which stream it will be. Now, if we, let's say, added our web data stream here, we don't have Google Tag Manager connected to this. And so we actually don't have this set up correctly. But if you were to view your tagging instructions, this is where you could install your Google Tag with your CMS that we discussed earlier. So actually here it'll be, what our instructions are. If you type in your URL, it'll hopefully be able to populate the CMS or supported platform that would work for you. And if not, then, and you're installing manually, make sure that you're adding this to the header and making sure it's on every single page of your website. And then this goes back again to ensuring that your pages are tagged correctly with GA4 to ensure that there are no data discrepancies. All right, so we have the stream name, stream URL, stream ID, measurement ID, and then what we're looking at here is actually your enhanced measurements. So enhanced measurements is one of the type of events that you're going to be able to collect in GA4. When you're opening this up, it'll actually be here, and it should be toggled on already. And if you don't want any of this data to be the insights that you're looking for, you can always toggle this off, but I would highly recommend that you keep it toggled on. And then what you would do is you will click into this settings icon, and we'll look here into all of the different enhanced measurements. We have page views, scrolls, and scrolls is typically how much a user or how many users complete 90% of your page. Like that's the scroll tagging for that one, just as a heads up. We have outbound clicks that are automatically collected, site search, form interactions if you have them, video engagements, and then file downloads. So these are all of the ones that will be kind of collected immediately once your GA4 property is connected, as long as you keep the toggle on. When you want to modify events, you can click here. And so if we're going to click into here to modify an event, what we're going to do actually is we're going to walk through how to create an event just to show you all what you could do if you're not using your Google Tag Manager in particular to create this. So one of the things that we could do is we could do a newsletter sign up. So you'll see me type in here newsletter or sign up _ newsletter. Again, you're not going to be able to use spaces. So all underscores, and if you're ever needing a space or something along those lines. And then you'll have event name equals to newsletter sign up or something like that. It can be something similar, honestly. And then let's say instead, you're like, okay, actually, no, Nicole, like I want to look at how to find my thank you landing page or something along those lines. We're going to do a combination of events here so that you can get the gist of it. You can essentially add something such as page location equals, and then this is where you could put the URL for the thank you page after someone completes, let's say, signing up for a subscription, or they've just contributed something to your publication. Then you would be able to actually put that value in here. And essentially then that would be your event. Now, let's say you have three different subscription packages, and you want to know which of those subscription packages were actually like purchased rather than the thank you page. And of course, your thank you page could have like a different landing page based off of your packages, and that's one way you could see it. But another way is you could actually use like modifications and add essentially like a parameter that says the more specific package that user signed up for, or like that they subscribed to. Anyway, that's essentially how you can use them here. I would also recommend using Google Tag Manager to manage a lot of your tags when you're trying to figure out what you want to put on your site. But that's essentially how you would use it. And there's also a lot of content online to kind of walk you through step by step if maybe I went too fast or I was slightly confusing. And also Tina can let me know if I was in the question and answer session, and then I can maybe walk through it a bit better. For custom events, same, creating custom events based off of what you're looking to measure within your site. And then this is where you can do your Google Tag Manager settings. So this is something that we just kind of looked a little bit at. But here you'll be able to see like automatic event detection, and then configuring your domains. Again, if you have Google Tag Manager, this is where you can go to make sure everything is set up correctly. All right. Then once you have set up those events that we just talked about, although they were fake events at the time, where they will populate themselves should be right here. So I didn't actually create that event. I probably actually should have just hit create so that you could see it here. But then when you have an event created, it will actually show itself right here. And then once you actually have that event created, that is where you'll also then be able to turn it on or mark it as a conversion. So fun fact, in everyone's accounts, everyone was given purchase as a conversion that was already added to your account, even if you had not yet added it. And so when you do have a conversion event such as this, what it'll actually be able to do is, this is where you can make sure that they're all marked on correctly. And if you wanted to make sure that they were definitely a conversion, all of the list will be here. And then you'll just have that exact same toggle on the right-hand side, which you can turn on. And I can also probably find a better view for us once we're going into our Q&A. All right, I think that for now, that's where we're going to stop for just kind of like showing the UI for today. We just wanted to make sure that you all know exactly how to start setting up your GA4 page and get into that and then start setting everything up so that everything is happening the way that it should be. All right, heading back to our presentation, actually, we are going to show what is after, or what's happening after and what's coming up. All right, so moving forward, what do I do after migrating and what will we cover in our upcoming webinars? And then we'll head into our question and answer session. But for our next upcoming webinars, we're also going to look at the Explore reports, or we're going to explore the reports. So there are a lot of different types of reports. There is the report section within the Google Analytics UI, and then there's also something called the explorations. And so both are reporting functionalities, but they act a tiny bit different. So we'll make sure to review those in our upcoming webinars. We will also show you how to create an audience segment. And if any of you have used our tools before, we're going to create something called our brand lovers, which is an audience of users who come to your site 15 plus times. And then lastly, we are going to show you how to adjust your data retention. It is automatically set to 2 months, but you can actually extend that to 14 months. And so we always think, just as a best practice, you can extend from 2 months to 14 months so that you can make sure to collect as much data as possible. All right, so this is a summarization of everything we've just chatted through on the slides and the UI today. Remember, these are the things that you want to keep top of mind. And I believe I will pass it back to Tina to start us in our Q&A. If I haven't missed anything, but Tina, please keep me honest.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much, Nicole, for taking the time. And of course, you guys can always rewatch this. It will be available on demand if you want to take a closer look at some of the demos that Nicole showed you today. And again, we also have 3 more of these sessions. So the next session will go very similarly into these things you can do ahead of July 1st, making sure that all of your data is stored properly and you're set up for success. And then the 2 sessions after July 1st will be about best practices and setting up your reporting for GA4. So just wanted to make a little shout out for that in case there was a question that we didn't go fully in depth in. And also want to shout out in our chat, Robbie Brown and Antao Diaz. They are part of our team who are helping to answer questions today. So big thank you to them. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to add them into the chat. We'll try to answer every single one, and they will be answered by the end of today regardless. But I do want to surface some questions on here since they might be helpful to everyone, just so that it makes a little bit more sense, all of these changes. So the first question we have here is, do you have recommendations for best practices around storing our UA data before 7.1?
Great question. So there is no perfect answer to this, although I do wish that there was. With the exporting of your data, essentially, I think that if you're comfortable using BigQuery, I know that BigQuery is available for all publishers to store their data in the midst of this change from Universal Analytics to GA4. But if not, I think that making sure you're just exporting it in general is a really good idea, given the fact that there has been that extension from December to July of next year. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a rush to export it either. So I would definitely have that conversation, figure out what would be best for your team, and kind of move forward from there.
Awesome. Second question. I know that the concept of traffic is changing a little bit. So we talked a little bit about that with goals and conversions and events. What would the equivalent definition of visits in GA4 be?
Great question. So the reason that this can be slightly confusing is because there is page views and then there's views. The reason that there is a distinction between the two is now because of GA4 and the ability to have cross-platform and cross-domain tracking. Essentially, views is encompassing both app and web, whereas page views is just going to be encompassing your web traffic. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
Amazing. And in case you guys are familiar with Antao and Nicole, they also work on a tool that we have at the Google News Initiative called News Consumer Insights. So we actually didn't go in depth into it today just because it will definitely be featured in an upcoming session, primarily around reporting. But in case you guys are curious, they have several categorizations of types of audiences. And so for brand lovers, for 15 visits, what is the period of time that measures?
Great question. It's the last 30 days of your data. So any at like 15 plus times in the last 30 days is essentially what we would consider a brand lover.
Amazing. And if someone's trying to switch over on, or if they've used News Consumer Insights with Universal Analytics, have you guys updated it for GA4?
Great question. So we have updated it for GA4, our News Consumer Insights tool, and actually very, very, very recently, our real-time content insights tool are both available now with GA4, which is fantastic. Our team is very excited that we were able to get them out before July 1.
Fabulous. And I will also link both of those tools in the chat or down below where the questions are in case you want direct links to those resources if you want to connect your Google Analytics to News Consumer Insights. Let's see if we have any other questions. Antal has done a really great job helping us out here. So
Antal's stealing my questions.
make sure to leave more questions in the chat, and we can. I'll also see if there's any that we can surface that might be helpful.
Awesome. And we can talk about some of the questions that I also get a lot of the time if publishers would like to hear those as well.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's see here. I have a notebook with all of these questions. Oh, okay. One thing that is actually kind of important when we were talking about the setup assistant, some publishers are like, I actually don't want any of my data to be automatically set up within my account. And so how can I maybe like turn that off? And the way that you can actually do that is at the bottom of your GA4 setup assistant, when you are in Universal Analytics. And Tina, if you wouldn't mind actually like quickly showing my screen, if we could. Perfect. So actually down here at the bottom, it says automatically set up a basic Google Analytics 4 property. You can actually turn this off. And so if you wanted to make sure that everything was going to be set up by yourself without any help from the setup assistant, you can just toggle this off and then you're good to go essentially. All right. That was all I wanted to show, Tina. Thanks.
And we have a great question here. When you say we should switch data retention to 14 months, does that mean data older than 14 months won't be available within GA4?
That's correct. Essentially, the data retention extends up to 14 months and no further than that. Good question.
Let's see here. Simple question on this one. How can I check to see if my Google Analytics 4 was set up correctly?
Great question. So there's a couple different ways to kind of check all of this. If you go within your Google Analytics 4 property, there should be something within your GA4 account underneath admin that says debug view. And if you see debug view, essentially you'll then also be able to see all of the events that are happening in real time for the events that are coming through. And so just kind of like go to that debug view, make sure that you see the events as they're coming through on your page. And as long as that looks fairly accurate, that's what I would say it's, tagged as the way it should be. And of course, if you do have, data continuing to roll in before July 1st, making sure that it looks fairly accurate, I would say is, it'll probably like line up correctly. It's when you have really large data discrepancies from Universal that would maybe concern me that some of the pages aren't tagged properly.
Super helpful. What happens if we don't migrate?
If you don't migrate, you essentially won't have the data starting July 1 until whenever you choose to start migration. So I urge you as strongly as I possibly can without sounding too bossy that you absolutely have to migrate over to GA4, even if that means you're not setting everything up the way that you would like it set up and it's not perfectly being run. That's okay. Just make sure that your GA4 tags are on your page, especially if you want to have at least a week of comparison to see how the data looks in both instances, so that if you were to automatically just switch to GA4, nothing would seem off, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, if you could share your screen one more time, could you show us again how you could download the data?
Yes. So here we are in our setup assistant. Actually, I don't even know if we needed to open that per se. Okay, so you actually can just be on this page on your admin tab. And then once you're on admin, if you scroll down here, you'll see debug view. So debug view is where you can click. Okay, so the unfortunate part is that our demo site does not have any data coming in whatsoever. And so you're not actually going to be able to see any of the events that would be collected right here. But this is essentially a rolling time count. If you can see as I scroll down, I know it's a little bit small, but you can essentially see here, and I can kind of zoom in, the time frame minute by minute. And so if you have a pretty decent understanding of what that should look like, you'll be able to see those events rolling in, and it'll show over here as well. That's essentially the first thing I would do to double check that your data is kind of flowing through properly.
Great. One more question kind of on that. I thought the UA properties automatically convert to GA4 if you don't do anything.
So if you have the automatic setup within your setup assistant, it should transition all of your property over to GA4, but sometimes you have to ensure that that's actually set up correctly. If you don't, then you're not going to have any data. But I would also highly encourage to switch yourself.
Totally. This question, I think, is pertinent to a lot of news folks. And again, we'll probably cover further in our reporting workshop. But is there a way to filter data on stories with a specific content type? For example, we want to look individually at news, opinion, or features, and not just as a whole group.
Filter data on stories with a specific content type. Yes, I think that if you're kind of like tagging your story pages or like certain sections within your site, you'll easily be able to pull that information in so that you can view kind of just the data within one section of your website. Mm-hmm.
And folks, we'll still be on for about another 15 minutes or so. So again, please feel free to keep putting your questions in the chat below. So you can press ask a question, and either we'll answer your question live if it pertains to everyone, or we'll have Antao or Robbie answer.
Antao and Robbie are great people to ask your questions to, so feel free to direct it towards them.
And a common question that we get asked for GA often is, if I don't want automatic settings to migrate, what do I do?
Yes. So essentially, if you go through to the setup assistant and you open up your GA4 connected property, you don't have to link the settings to migrate as well. And that's something that it'll ask you in like a little box that'll pop up. And so as long as you just create your GA4 property and then you have them connected, your UA and GA4, you don't have to have the tags or the setup assistant all port over. So you can either like toggle that off from what I was just showing like a few minutes ago, or when you're setting it up, it'll ask you if that is something that you want, and you can say no.
Perfect. Yeah, and if we're not getting as many questions, we can definitely walk that through as a demo.
Yes. One other thing to note is that if something does get ported over that you maybe didn't want to come over to your GA4 instance, for the most part, you should be able to delete or change most of what's coming over into your account. The one thing that I will say is that if it was a certain type of event and you deleted that, I'm not entirely certain if that nomenclature for the name would be available again if it's been deleted, but that's the only thing that I could think of. And so for the most part, everything is easy to like adjust and change.
Great. We have a couple questions here. Actually, we've gotten this question twice, so I think this will be a good one. What about web stories data? We're having trouble to get it on GA4.
Web stories data, is this in regards to potentially AMP?
Yes, actually, I think Antao may have answered it, so we'll make sure that he answers this one as well.
Perfect. AMP, just so that I know that AMP is a main concern for a lot of publishers. Our team is very well aware of this, but we have no updates that we can share currently.
Great. And a couple more questions on data retention. Can you expand on data retention? Will nothing be retained after 14 months? So no year-over-year data other than the previous year. Do we need to export regularly from GA4 to save any data?
So the data retention after 14 months after 14 months, there should be some sort of data like exporting and plan in place for that data, because it will not just be stored within reporting on the GA4 interface.
Great. A great pre-July 1st question. How long do we have to download UA legacy data?
Great question. So originally, actually July 1 of 2024. That's how long you'll have your UA account. If it is a free account, you will need to transition at least to GA4 this July 1. But everyone, including those that are on 360 or the free version, will have access to their UA data until July 1st of 2024.
Great. This is a fun question. I will specifically mention we are not the GA4 team, unfortunately. So we don't specifically know what the GA4 team is thinking about. But I think this is a really great question because there are some really cool features for Google Analytics 4. So are there any AI tools integrated with GA4, for example, for predictions?
Tina really set me up to easily answer this one, but because we don't actually have the GA4 team with us, I can't say if there's going to be any additional tools, but as Tina also mentioned, we have the machine learning insights, and this is something that we'll show when we walk through the user interface in the next 2 or 3 sessions, but essentially the machine learning will have these predictions or let's say insights to share, or predictive audiences, that type of information within these accounts. And so there's definitely machine learning, but other than like all of those insights that are surfaced automatically, I can't speak to whether or not there will be maybe like another tool integrated with that. But there's definitely machine learning insights, which is really cool.
Yeah, and again, as Nicole mentioned, you can also search for insights. So that'll make things a lot easier in terms of, if not necessarily like looking for a report you've already set up, but if there's a specific piece of data you're looking for, you'll be able to search for that. And that is also powered by AI. In the next minute or so, you guys will see a Google form pop up on the right. It really helps us to get feedback on these types of workshops and sessions. This is the first of its kind that we're doing for the migration for Google Analytics 4. So if you enjoy this session or if you have any feedback, please feel free to fill out that Google form on the right. It should take less than a minute to fill out, but it will help us be able to deliver more sessions like these. So we only have a couple minutes left here, so we'll try to answer as many of these questions as we can. And again, if you want to check out any of the tools that we mentioned today, News Consumer Insights and Real-Time Content Insights are both compatible with GA4 now, so you can link those together. And again, we also posted the application for our Fundamentals Lab, which is our cohort-based programs for groups of news publishers to grow their audiences and revenue. So again, all those resources are in the chat and also linked on this talk.
Awesome.
Great. Let me just take a look on any last questions here. Nicole, are there any parting thoughts or wisdom that you want to share?
I think that as long as for the first webinar of this series or Q&A, I think my main goal is to make sure everyone has a GA4 instance by the next time that we speak next week on Thursday at the same time. And then from there, I think we'll be able to learn more about the user interface, how to walk through the setup of other things, or just like learning how to kind of use reports, etc., explorations. So I would love so much if you all come to the next webinar and you're like, I have my GA4 instance set up. So that's my only thought for today.
Yeah, totally. And this is a journey. It's going to take a couple of steps to get everything set up for success. So again, thanks for joining us today and for all of your questions. Kind of previewing a little bit, if events share a custom dimension, how do you set up a report to see custom dimensions or for just one specific event? What I'll also add to this question is, what is a custom dimension? What does that mean within GA4? And I can share your screen if that would be helpful too.
Yeah, no, I think we can talk through this and then, oh wait, the question also disappeared, but I think I have the whole question. Oh, amazing. Okay, so once you create essentially like an event or events sharing a custom dimension. So if you have these like custom events, you can essentially like look in the reports tab, and then you can actually like add a filter for some of these like dimensions and events if you wanted to take a closer look at them. What I would recommend is if you're looking for really specific pieces of data, or maybe more so like one-offs, I would actually go into your explorations report and pull all of the information from there that you're looking for based off of your custom dimensions or specific event. Did I get everything, Tina?
Great. Let's take a look here. There's one question, and I think this might be a little bit more to do with kind of the differences between UA and GA4 as well. I'm seeing a big discrepancy in my weekly users between my site's UA instance and GA4 instance. Any suggestions on how to troubleshoot what the issue is?
Yeah, so there's a myriad of things to think about. So within GA4 in general, because the counting is a little bit different, if it's a really large discrepancy, then like, yes, we have some things that we need to take a look at. The one thing that I will first take note of is that there will be a slight difference in the numbers just in general because of the way that the data models are set up. Secondly, we also have our cross-platform, cross-device tracking. So for any reason your user is going from one to another, we'll count that now as one user instead of multiple. Another thing is we have kind of fixed a little bit of our bot traffic. I don't know how much of that could potentially be playing into this, but that's also something to always like think about. And then the last thing, which I know I've said a couple times, but just to double check it, is making sure that you're tagging all of your pages with your GA4 tag and that you haven't missed any of them. From there, that's where I would start. I know that was a lot to think about at first, but that's where I would start to just troubleshoot that discrepancy.
No, super helpful. Should we turn off thresholding if we're not collecting enough data for it to meet the minimums?
I don't know if I have like a direct, strong take on that one, to be completely honest. I could take a look into it to see if it's something that we should, consider turning off or on. But I think for the most part, I think what the data thresholding is being used for is to make sure we're getting like a more accurate representation of your data. And so I probably wouldn't mess with the original settings, but I'm happy to take a look into it and maybe address it in our next webinar as well.
Great. All
Or
right.
if Antau or Robbie has a comment that they would like to add in, feel free.
Totally. All right, let's see here. All right, how many custom dimensions can you add to each event?
Oh, that's a really good question. And you're absolutely testing my memorization. I will say that we're going to we'll include the reference page of the limits for everything. Because I don't have that one off the top of my head.
No worries. We can definitely have Antau and Robbie get to that one.
Yeah, there's definitely a page with all of your limits so that you can make sure you're not going over them.
Yeah. Would you say that is there typically multiple dimensions that people attach to an event? Usually how many is that?
That's a good question. I would say that like 2 or 3 maybe would make sense to me for the most part for news publishers.
Mm-hmm. What's an example of like an event that might have those kinds of dimensions?
Of like custom dimensions that they're adding on. I think it could be I think it could be anything as simple as like even just like your subscription and having custom dimensions based off of the different types of subscriptions that you have and the users that are coming from them. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it can kind of be a decent amount. I'm trying to think of other custom ones that you could use. If it comes to me, I'll bring it up.
No worries.
Yeah.
Awesome. So another question here on data thresholding, and I guess maybe before we get into that, what is data thresholding? Like, what does that mean? Why does it matter in GA4?
Yeah, so essentially data thresholding is when there is so much data and we're essentially trying to make sure that we're giving an accurate representation of the data when we're reporting on it within your analytics account. And so there will be thresholding of data when there's not certain limits met, so that you essentially are seeing a more like an accurate representation, and will hold back, or the analytics team will hold back certain things that they're showing due to limits of data.
Great. Super helpful.
Yeah.
And on that note, can you shed some light on what the thresholding limits are? Also, does that mean we cannot see smaller clusters of events?
I think that this is something where we could like potentially add in like a help doc from the analytics center just to like make sure everyone is clear on the data thresholding and like the limits that it could have. But essentially it's just like when there's not enough data, essentially like a lot of GA4 was created so that we can protect the privacy of users. And so if there's not enough data to protect the privacy of users as well, that's why some of the thresholding could potentially occur. I don't believe that there were any limits that I was specifically aware of last time I checked. But of course, that's something that we can always include as much as we have knowledge of within like a support doc or something.
Great. Yeah. And we'll definitely, I know we are almost at time here. So any questions that we haven't answered live or we haven't commented on, we'll continue to answer those throughout the rest of the day. I know we mentioned that we'll link a couple of things and we'll try to find the answers to some of the ones that we didn't know. So thank you guys so much for joining us again. And I just wanted to call out our resources that we've mentioned in the chat as well for news consumer insights and real-time content insights. Those are two tools from the Google News Initiative team that are now compatible with Google Analytics 4. So now you can you can now link those to your Google Analytics. And lastly, to apply for our fundamentals lab. So we have monthly applications for our fundamentals lab where you can join a cohort of news publishers that are looking to grow audience and revenue. And so that's a really great way to get more involved with the Google News Initiative. But Nicole, any last wishes and thoughts for folks ahead of the July 1st deadline?
I just want to say thank you all for your time today. I know there was a lot going on and I did my best to answer the questions, and I'll make sure to make sure we get all of those answers out to everyone. So for any reason they weren't answered, they will be. But yes, thank you all for your time. And I look forward to hearing from all of you next week about your new GA4 properties that have been created.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And again, we'll be hosting these sessions there's one more session next Thursday at the same time, 2 p.m. So we'll see you again here. And then we'll do 2 more sessions after the July 1st migration, where we'll just talk more about reporting, which I know you guys had a lot of questions about reporting and dimensions. We'll make sure to cover a lot of those topics, as well as some best practices to set you guys up for success for GA4. So thank you again all for making the time to join us today. And we hope we answered all of your questions.
Thanks so much, everyone.